Atlantic Policy Congress, our First Nations Chief Secretariat, brings together 38 First Nations in the Atlantic region of Canada. Through its Atlantic Aboriginal Economic Development Integrated Research Program, or ADERP, a group of Atlantic region elders are involved in a project called Honoring Traditional Knowledge. This project was initiated because of the critical importance of consulting with elders and having their perspectives included in community economic development projects and in research on Aboriginal economic development. As part of the project, an Elders Mawiomi, which means gathering in Mi'kmaq, brought together elders from 4 Aboriginal cultures of the Atlantic region, Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Innu, and Inuit. From August 12th to the 14th, 2010, elders gathered in Millbrook First Nation at the Goose Cap Heritage Centre.
The Mawiomi got underway with a welcoming address by Chief Lawrence Paul of Millbrook.
But now, as I tell the young people, walk high with your head held high and full of pride. Because if you're a native, you have a lot to be proud of. And for thousands of years we were here and we survived, and there was a lot of culture lost over the decades, but now we're bringing it back. And we have to depend on elders now to make for all them stories, all the culture, and all the herbal medicine.
Grand Chief Ben Silverboy welcomed the elders to Mi'kma'ki in his own language. He expressed his gratitude for organizing the event and for such a good program. He welcomed the discussion around traditional knowledge and our Aboriginal ways of being, which has not been recorded. He also recognized the challenges that has had for our people.
La program boy when I do it. Chicken the town done way died. Could in here? Well, town boy, don't tell all the Mogas, best one we got no tummy. And which pa William to out see quite a lamo. Could in here? Well, history, best one we got no tummy. And which pa could immediate. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Because first, we'll die. We die. I'm making my way ready. Then, we start to open it.
Elder Doug Knockwood from Indian Brook First Nation gave the opening prayer for the Mawiomi.
The Mawiomi was an opportunity for Millbrook community people to host the elders, where dancers, singers, drummers, meal providers, and logistic support people came together to make the event successful. The Mawiomi was an important event because there hasn't been one in the region in recent memory. Not to mention it included 4 Aboriginal cultures of the Atlantic.
Gwen Bear of Tobique First Nation set the tone for the first day with her opening remarks. She talked about sharing and creativity and underlined the importance of the participation needed from all the elders for the benefit of future generations. Gwen encouraged the elders from all 4 directions to tell their stories and share their points of view.
I have an eagle feather which I will pass around. They call the bigger ones teachers. And that's what I'm going to pass around. We're all going to be teachers this morning. We're going to share medicine stories. Many of us have overcome things in life. Addictions, pain, health issues, family issues. We've overcome a lot in our lives. And what we'd like to have this morning is to have a picture of all that from each of the directions. From those of you who are from up north, I know that you went through the same thing that we may have. the ones who are to the west and to the east. We all have those stories that will help others. And this is what needs to be shared. We need, all of us, a bigger picture of what exists in all our communities.
Things got underway as the eagle feather was passed around. Everyone present had the opportunity to introduce themselves and give some personal background. This sharing circle provided a sense of harmony and sacredness for the elders to speak, listen, and learn from each other's gifts of knowledge. Elders spoke of their experiences and knowledge concerning fishing and hunting rights, spirituality, residential schools, traditional knowledge and medicines, the federal government, the BNA Act, education, and quite appropriately, the discussion of who is an elder and the accompanying responsibilities.
I was asked last week or 2 weeks ago, or maybe 2 months ago, to find a suitable explanation for what constitutes an elder. We're very free with the word elder. As soon as you have some gray hair, oh, here comes an elder. Or your face is wrinkled, oh my God. Or you get your first old age pension check. You know, it takes far more than that to be an elder. And not every one of us is an elder. Maybe none of us are. And we know that knowledge is spirit. Knowledge is transferable. All knowledge is. Math, English, and everything is transferable. If we're successful in one subject, it's very, very likely that you will be successful in another topic. And so I learned over the years, it has to be passed. It's a gift. It's a gift from our ancestors, this thing called knowledge. Some institutions call it traditional knowledge. Others call it Aboriginal knowledge. They put many labels on it. But we must pass it on. We must pass it on, or it'll be all gone. There'll be none. So we teach our children, we listen to old people, and we must try to pass it on. Through stories, through hunting, fishing, whatever that you do in your daily activities. Same with being at powwows. You meet a lot of friends and then you learn something new each time you meet a person. And that there are 7 sacred lives of life. All of us have these gifts: love, honesty, humility, respect, truth, and wisdom. We all have them. Every one of us have them. The only main point that you have to understand that these gifts have to be visible. These 7 gifts have to be visible in you. You can't say, oh, I love the Mi'kmaq Nation, and say those bastards, you know? You have to mean what you say. You have to have humility. You have to have respect. You have to have truth and patience and wisdom and all of that. Wisdom is the most sought out. Everybody wants to be wise. But that's the last gift you receive. The last gift that will show itself. And sometimes when a person comes up to the podium and clears their throat and say, I'm an elder. What happened to humility? It ran away before he got to the podium or what? But you know, the humility is not, and it makes people uncomfortable. When you hear someone say, oh, I'm an elder, you just squirm or you want to jump up and do something terrible, like curse. When you have all of those gifts, you have managed to hang on to them and display them within yourself, then wisdom will show up. And once wisdom shows up, you become not only a counselor, you become a healer, you become everything that you want to be when you have wisdom. Because you have all of these life experiences behind you to motivate you to make decisions based on experiences. No, you cannot be an elder with 10 easy lessons, or you cannot be, those gifts have to show up in you. You must be able to display them. You cannot be patient and be disrespectful. You cannot have honesty and then steal everything in front of you. You have to display these gifts. They have to be seen in you. And that, when all of these gifts are seen in you, you don't have to go to the podium and tell us, I am an elder. People will tell you, you're an elder.
The second day of the Mawiomi got started with an appeal to the elders to come up with recommendations as to how they should be consulted, how their expertise regarding traditional knowledge and worldviews could be utilized. Albert Marshall expressed an important concern at this time.
As far as APC is concerned, as far as chiefs are concerned, traditional knowledge is nothing more than just something that is very, very philosophical. It has no practical application. Or you can put it the other way. It's a paradoxical riddle with no solution. And what I want to tell you is, unless APC makes a very concerted effort and try to integrate traditional knowledge in everything that the chiefs and the APC does, then I don't want no part. Right? Unless there is a direct integration with traditional knowledge, with all of our programs, whether it's economic development, social justice, education, and so on. And that's my position.
In discussions the next morning, elders had more stories and experiences to share. Much of the discussion was about the proper uses of traditional knowledge in the elder storytelling. There were elders that expressed their concerns about maintaining proper respect for traditional knowledge, such as its use in medicines. Others expressed an urgency of passing on the knowledge to youth and to communities, while elders are living and willing to share their knowledge. They made important observations and recommendations that will be useful for developing protocols and guidelines for working with elders.
First of all, there's a protocol. If you go to an elder, you should offer him tobacco. If the elder can help you, he'll accept it. If he can't help you, he may use the tobacco and ask somebody else. But if he decides not to, he can give the tobacco back to you and say, I'm sorry, you have to go see somebody else.
The more respect you pay to your medicine, the stronger it will be. And if you have people that want medicine, there's also a protocol for that. You go up to the medicine person and you offer them something. It could be tobacco, because we have to make tobacco offerings. It could be money, although I don't always accept money. It could be something from your heart, like something you made, like a craft or food or a service. As for the question here, where how we should be consulted when sharing traditional knowledge, that's like a hot topic right now, because I have problems with some people who are like, our ancestors hid stuff, and the only way we were supposed to pass it down was by word of mouth. It lasted for 500 years that way, since the coming of the Europeans, and even before then, and it's still going on that way. To write it down, you're setting it up for abuse by pharmaceuticals, the way I say it anyway, and for it to be plagiarized and patented and stuff like that. But there are those people that think it's that time for it to be written down and for it to be out there. I don't believe that, but there are those that do. And I'm conflicted with that thought.
The elders addressed Albert's concern and discussed how they could be more visible in their communities. It is evident that elders feel there is a need for rescuing traditional ways where leadership and elders can work together for community development.
Like Albert was saying, we cannot tell our leaders, our chiefs and council, what to do. That's a no-no. And then it's not my intention to go to the chief and council and tell them, look, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. I was a chief at one time. I was a traditional chief, and I was also a chief under the Indian Act. And First of all, would they listen to you? Secondly, you're interfering in the politics. And next thing you know, you'd be ousted from the reserve. Or if that didn't work, you go to some other community and they make sure that you do not practice whatever you do in that area. So you see, you have to be careful. You have to respect the leaders, the leadership of the community. And one of the things we've been asking with traditional knowledge is that the things pertaining to the people who live there, the practices and what they do, remains with the people of that community. And if you want to share in that community, you have to ask permission for that community. Of course, it boils down to respect. And another thing is teaching your children. This is why I find it very important for the elders. We should be sitting down with our children, even though they're not coming to us.
Some of our medicines that grows by the waters are affected with the environment. Medicines conduct the way people conduct themselves. If you don't use the proper services from the elders will move away, will not answer you. It's the same with all the medicines. If you don't use it and acknowledge it, it'll do the same thing. Medicines move around. Medicines move around. And medicines do talk in ways. And I agree with the elder, Albert Marshall. I agree with him with 100% of what he had said. What are the chief and counselors are going to do with this knowledge that we've shared? Are they ready for it? If not, leave it alone till they're ready. The Grandmother's Council of Elders have to be formed in every community. Grandmother Council of Elders have to be listened to. And the chief and counselors have to really listen to what these grandmothers have to say. And you know the grandmothers have the last say, not the chief and counselors after they abide the rules, the traditional laws.
Throughout the day, elders spoke about the need for traditional knowledge to be passed down and shared. Elders are respectful of the fact that process for doing things is important and that they cannot do it alone. Education is important, but so is taking action. Elders are involved in many different projects in health, education, and community development. The following elders shared some of their wisdoms in those areas.
The question is, I guess, how we would like to be consulted. From my perspective, I would like to see us be consulted in a meaningful way and have an advisory role in any type of development that's going to take place. Elders in the past, in our culture, ran the communities. There was no police. There was no priest. There was just the elders. And the elders, our elders, I guess all elders, are filled with humility. And I think with humility comes a finer degree of wisdom. That's been replaced by band councils, town councils, regional governments, and everything else. But I do feel that elders can still play an important and meaningful role in an advisory capacity. I think, like one of the people before me talked about traditional ways, and that's been experienced in our culture in Labrador too, because all the old people ever did was take what they needed and no more. But that's not the case today. The young people are not following the old traditions. So I think as elders acting in an advisory capacity, we could be involved in the education field and perhaps not teach ourselves, but make recommendations to the educational people to teach traditional ways in school. With this big hydro development coming, they talk about jobs, they talk about the power that's going to be produced and all that. Nobody's talking about culture, nobody's talking about the people, nobody's talking about the environment. So all those things need to be addressed. So I think if you can involve elders in economic development, then could have a meaningful outcome. Elders, in my opinion, elders can, from time to time, provide clear moments in our lives. And that can lead to positive and meaningful decisions being made in the future. I know there's a big balancing act between elders and elected bodies. So the lady next to Richard said, are they ready? And of course they're not. And neither are the elders ready. But we have to start somewhere. And I would be very enthused if we could come away from this conference with a resolution that's going to be worded in a manner that says that at least we'll start the process.
And everywhere I went, I always had someone to work with. And no matter what we do in our lives, we can't do it alone. And I think this is the way our programs in our Native communities should be working, is on a teamwork effort. The most successful programs I've seen is by two people, because one man can't do it alone. And I think that our leaders need to remember that this philosophy pays off in not forgetting who put you in the driver's seat.
Merdina Marshall and Gwen Bear's roles at the Mawiomi were as elders and academic scholars. Their perspectives stem from their experiences in academia as educators and from the strong cultural, spiritual, and traditional knowledge derived from their respective lives. Merdina speaks about uniting the two worlds of her life experiences.
When I first introduced traditional knowledge to my students in 1985, grade 6 students, the whole community was in an uproar. They accused me of bringing back children 300 or 400 years. And that thing you're talking about is all gone. We left it. And so my lesson stopped at that. Because I grew up my entire life speaking Mi'kmaq and being trained by various aunts and uncles. And so I left that be until I got to university. Then I had some freedom. Working for a band school isn't a joy. They dictate what you should teach. And if they don't like it, even though it's good for the kids, they won't allow you. I tried to teach HIV, they went crazy. They said, you're teaching children how to have sex and all that. So I had a hard time. I'm always been a fighter, and I've been fighting every day. So when I got to university, I decided to write them down, because the only way that you can teach a lesson is documented. You cannot teach from your head. Everything has to be documented and presented to the council of the academic council has to approve it before you can teach it. But they said you have to publish it. It has to be published before you can teach it. That's part of the that's the protocol here. So I wrote them down, and my thought of publishing was different than of those people. My writings, by publishing, you put an ownership on them. Oh, those are mine. You cannot quote for them until you ask me. And you know, that's awful. And my training as a First Nations person was to spread this knowledge. Spread it as fast as you can while the language is here. And so when I started to write them down, I'm literate in 5 different catharographies, starting from hieroglyphics to Smith Francis to Listwood to Elzebuk. I can read all their systems. They said, that's not, you're doing wrong, because they're not in Mi'kmaq. And once you publish them, they're no longer oral traditions, because they're now written down. But I had to think hard and long. 75% of our nations, all nations in here, are not speaking their own language. We only have a small bit of 25% to work with. And if we don't put them in a language that's universal, the children will never get them, and they will not have them. At least reading them in English, they can digest them and retain the information and use it for their own lives and lives of their children. But now things have changed. You can bring up new information that is versatile, and it's just ready to be put to work, and it pertains to all of us.
I guess I'm in a better position now. I work for the University of New Brunswick, and I'm involved in a project called Before the Dam, and we worked out how we were going to save that knowledge. There is a copy of it at the university, but whoever is interviewed within that research project owns their interview. They are the ones who can say how it's to be distributed or how it's to be used, or, you know, they own it. And I think we're following the same sort of thing as we're here and sharing things here. I think as a group, we needed to hear your stories yesterday, because there's always that buildup of trust among us that has to happen before we can move ahead to probably the next step, whatever that next step is. And all of us should know about what's developed in each of our territories, and how we have to follow certain ways and processes of how this knowledge has to be. And I know I listened to Merdina yesterday that this knowledge isn't for ourselves, because if we keep that knowledge, it just becomes stagnant, and it helps no one. We do have to pass it on. So how do we do that? We do have to look at that question. How do we pass it on? And share those universal ways, I guess, that we're going to have to develop.
One of the greatest gifts elders have is their knowledge. Therefore, it is vital for the communities to become aware of the wealth of teachings that the elders provide. Elder Christine Boone from St. Mary's First Nation makes a recommendation for future work.
I think we should have an elders group together in the Maritime Provinces. It's a start at least. People have been talking about this for years, to have an elders group across Canada, but nothing was never done. So to me, if the Maritime Provinces started, maybe it would follow through across Canada. The government's got the Senate, and I'm sure the chiefs would like to have an elders circle too.
Elders are our guides. They will continue to provide their wisdom on the sharing and safekeeping of traditional knowledge. Their knowledge must be shared in our communities, especially with our future leaders. As Atlantic Region elders have indicated, the establishment of a regional elders council is needed. Protocols directed by elders for those wishing to work alongside them are critical. The APC Elders Project is just a starting point for seeking guidance from Atlantic Region elders on how they would like to be consulted when sharing traditional knowledge and Aboriginal worldviews. The hope with this project is that, like the torch that Glooscap carries, the roles of elders as traditional knowledge holders will be reignited in the Atlantic region. Will Aliag.